Part 118. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1172. Chapter 1172 Looking for Help. The powerful and arrogant Jin Shenyang. On a steep mountain peak east of the Vajra Gate, Jin Shengtai dragged his fat body panting to a simple wooden house on the top of the mountain. Every time he comes here, Jin Shengtai finds it difficult to understand. The Jin family is not a poor family. They have millions of dollars in wealth and many servants. But why has my brother suddenly changed his temper after entering the Vajra Gate? He doesn't want any maids or servants, and he stays alone. On this mountain? It has been 6 years since Jin Shengtai came to the Vajra Gate. He has had more than a dozen maids around him. Every day he has sex with women and is happy with women. Even so, he still feels that it is not enough and wants to attract more beauties and delicious food. Comparing the two, Jin Shenyang lived the life of an ascetic. On a cliff at the top of the mountain, Jin Shenyang was naked from the waist up, revealing his strong muscles. He stood on one leg on the edge of the cliff, holding 2 boulders weighing more than 500 kilograms in each hand. On top of the boulder, there are 5 or 6 small stones of different sizes and shapes stacked on top of each other. These tower-shaped stones are not smoothly connected to each other and are trembling slightly, as if they will fall down at any time. But an hour passed, and these dangerous stones were stacked together as before, and not a single one fell off. If you look closely, you will find that Jin Shenjiang's muscular arms are constantly swinging in a very small range to adjust the balance on the stones held by his arms. This scene, watched by interested people, is definitely hard to conceal the shock in their hearts. First of all, lifting 2 boulders weighing more than 500 kilograms for an hour simply relying on the physical strength of the arms is not something that ordinary people can do. What's more, you have to keep the balance of the small rocks on it. It can be seen that this person's physical strength and coordination have reached a level that is unimaginable for ordinary disciples. When Jin Shengtai came to his brother, he saw such a surprising scene. "What's up?" Jin Shenyang ended today's practice, slowly put down the stones on his hands, grabbed a towel and wiped the fine sweat on his body, turned to his brother and said, "Jin Shenjiang's practice is not over, Jin Shengtai is not there to disturb." Seeing his brother asking, Jin Shengtai immediately came forward and said with a pair of cooing little eyes, "Brother, that brat Suchen has returned to the sect." There was no emotion in Jin Shenjiang's eyes, and he said a faint "yeah," then grabbed a long knife beside him and wiped it carefully. Jin Shengtai saw his brother's indifferent look and said anxiously, "Brother, that kid is back. Brother, you have broken through to the 9th level of Kaiwu. We should teach him a lesson now." Jin Shenyang looked at the long knife in his hand and said calmly, "Didn't you declare a challenge to that kid in my name before? Since the gauntlet says it will be after March, then let's kill him after March." "But..." Jin Shenyang put down his long knife and turned to stare at Jin Shengtai. Jin Shengtai shuddered involuntarily and did not dare to speak any more. He has been afraid of his brother since he was a child, and as he grows older, Jin Shenyang is much superior to him in terms of strength and intelligence. Jin Shengtai is even more in awe of his brother than his father. "To me, Suchen is just a flea that can be crushed to death. He will die sooner or later. Why are you so anxious?" Jin Shenyang waved his hand impatiently, walked to the edge of the cliff, squinted at the sky, and said in a deep voice, "My target is the 9 people in front of me. The 3 of them, Sun Zheng, Li Rui, and Tianji Yun, were just relying on being older than me and had to practice for 2 more years before they could squeeze me out. Now I have reached the 9th level of Kaiwu, and there are still more than 8 months left before the annual exam. These 8 months are enough to raise my strength to the peak. I'm determined to eat those 3 people." At this time, Jin Shenjiang's eyes showed unabashed ambition. Sun Zheng, Li Rui, and Tianji Yun were the 7th, 8th, and 9th placers in last year's annual examination qualifying, and 3 of them were ranked first last year. He is already at the 9th level of Chi martial arts, and his martial arts skills are not outstanding. Ordinary Vajra sect disciples cannot take even one move from these 3 people. Their strength is extremely terrifying. The fact that Jin Shenyang has the confidence to defeat them 8 months later is enough to prove this. People still have some confidence. It's not that Jin Shenyang doesn't want to win the first place, it's just that although he is a little crazy, he is still reasonable. None of the top 5 are easy to get along with, not to mention Monument Destroyer Huang Zhenyu and Little King Kong Zhonghong, Crazy Han Chuang, and even Lu Mumei, the 5th ranked Plum Blossom Sword, Jin Shenyang, whose stunning Plum Blossom Sword technique can't sustain 10 moves. As for the person ranked first, Jin Shenyang just thought about it for a moment, I couldn't help but shudder. This person is really a monster. If he hadn't been seriously injured when he went on a sect mission a few years ago, he would have already broken through to the Suanhui realm. The key point is that this person is only 17 years old, and is among the top 10 outer sect disciples. He is the youngest among the masters, but he is also the strongest. Everyone can see that this boy has unlimited potential, and he may become one of the candidates for the head of the Vajra sect in the future. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1173. Chapter 1173 The Ultimate State of Mad Dragon Sword Technique. The disadvantages of the residual scroll technique. Shaking his head, Jin Shenyang clenched his fists hard and exhaled a breath to drive away all the distracting thoughts in his mind, and his eyes regained a compelling energy. Jin Shengtihan bowed and quietly took a step back, looking at his brother in awe, feeling a little proud in his heart, but mostly feeling inferior. Jin Shenyang turned his head and looked at his younger brother with some disappointment, waved his hand and said, "You go. Don't bother me again during this period. I'm going to go to Juying Valley. When the time comes, I will know how to do it. Slap that flea to death. I have vaguely grasped the mastery of Kuang sword technique, and it's time to take a step further." Jin Shengtai was overjoyed when he heard his brother's words. The Mad Dragon sword technique is a martial art passed down from generation to generation of the Jin family, and it is a rare Xian level martial art. Although it is only a low-level skill, its power is completely different from that of the yellow-level martial arts, and ordinary families are not qualified to possess it. Unexpectedly, my brother has already mastered this martial art to the point where it is close to mastery. Kim Sung Taiji. On the way up the mountain, there was a hum in my mouth. Suchen, it's not good for you to offend anyone, but you have to offend me. I will return the hurt and humiliation you gave me 100-fold. Humph, you still want me to give you 200 spiritual stones. Pooh. Just wait, even if you kneel down in front of me and beg, I will not let you go. If you don't destroy all the meridians in your body and turn you into a useless thing who can only beg, I, Jin Shengtai, write the 3 characters backwards. Ha 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 ha. Bursts of wild laughter echoed across the mountains for a long time. In the quiet practice room, Suchen sat cross-legged, calmly, slowly adjusted his condition to the best, and began to take the first spirit condensing pill. The spirit condensing pill is a first-level middle-grade elixir. The spiritual energy contained in it is not only much purer than the Qi gathering powder, but also 7 or 8 times larger. In order not to waste even a trace of the spirit condensing pill's spiritual energy, Suchen used the most in a safe way: dissolve the spirit condensing pill in your mouth little by little with saliva, and then swallow it step by step. Only when the meridians have completely absorbed one spiritual power can the second spiritual power be swallowed. A condensing spirit pill, it took a total of 10 times to swallow it before it was all consumed. When the last bit of the spiritual fluid transformed from the spirit condensing pill was successfully absorbed by the meridians, Suchen successfully broke through to the middle level of the 7th level of Qi martial arts, and was only one step away from the high level. No, he paused, just taking a short rest. After the roiling spiritual power in his body gradually subsided, he threw the second condensing pill into his mouth. 2 hours later, his cultivation level broke through again, reaching the 7th level. After taking 2 condensing pills it took Suchen 4 full hours, and the sun was already setting outside the house. After eating something, he went to the courtyard to practice a few sets of swordsmanship. Then Suchen returned to the house again, crossed his legs and adjusted his breathing, and used the increased spiritual energy. Strength is slightly consolidated. Because his martial arts state of mind is still the realm of the 9th level of Suanwuo, there is no danger of going crazy if he continuously takes pills to forcibly increase his strength. Holding the last spirit condensing pill, he took a deep breath, threw it into his mouth without hesitation. 3 hours later, Suchen walked out of the house with a gloomy look. At this time, the spiritual energy around him was extremely full, and there were even signs of leakage. Because the spiritual energy in his body was too full, the whole body his skin was slightly red, and the meridians in his body were throbbing with pain from time to time. Anyone who saw Suchen's appearance knew that he was already on the verge of breaking through, and there was only a thin obstacle left between him and the 8th level of Kaiwu. But this, however, the layers of obstacles were not as fragile as imagined. Suchen spent a whole hour constantly attacking the 8th meridian. Until he finally lost his strength, he still could not develop this meridian. This was something he had never encountered in so many years of practice. Situations visited. Could it be that, the shortcomings of the fragmented scroll technique have begun to appear? Suchen frowned deeply. Before he chose to practice this technique, he already knew that although the spiritual power cultivated by this technique was much deeper than ordinary techniques, it also made it more difficult to break through. Suchen simply thought before that this so-called difficulty was just because the amount of spiritual energy was large, and the amount of spiritual energy to be accumulated was more than ordinary people, so it took more time. Now it seems that it is definitely more than that. Why can't the 8th meridian be opened no matter what, even though the spiritual power in the body is already fully charged? Suchen raised his head and looked at the moon, unable to sleep all night. The next day, Suchen went directly to the Sutra Collection Pavilion of the Vajragate. In the Bowen Pavilion at the bottom of the Sutra Collection Pavilion, he eagerly searched for everything related to the residual scroll technique books. Although the Bowen Pavilion collects many books, they do not contain exercises, so there are no restrictions on entry to this pavilion. The Wujing Pavilion above the Bowen Pavilion is different. Wujing Pavilion it is divided into 3 floors, namely Kaiwu Pavilion, Suanwuo Pavilion and even Jinwuo Pavilion. The 3 pavilions are divided into categories according to their cultivation levels. They contain all the secret books of exercises collected since the founding of the Vajra section. Non-sect disciples are not allowed to enter, and there are strict level restrictions, not only at the door. There are dharma restrictions in place, and there are powerful masters guarding them in the dark day and night, so no one is allowed to trespass. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1174. Chapter 1174 Ancient Books. Strengthen your body and give it a try. Bowen Pavilion has a large collection of books. There are dozens of rows of huge bookshelves. At a glance, there are probably tens of thousands of books. Although the space of this library is the largest among the several floors of the library, it is also the most spacious. There were only a few disciples in the huge book pavilion, and they were all immersed in their own books. It was very quiet, except for the occasional sound of pages turning. But this kind of environment is just right for Suchen. He doesn't want anyone to know the secret of the fragmented scroll technique. Even if it's not a secret, it's best if only God knows and the earth knows. It took me 3 full hours and rummaged through more than a dozen bookshelves before I found 2 ancient books that briefly mentioned the fragmented scroll technique. There was a passage in it that made Suchen suddenly enlightened. The residual scroll technique has 1 advantage and 3 disadvantages. The advantages of this technique are well known all over the world, but many people only know the disadvantages of this method, 1 and 2, but few people know the third. One of the disadvantages is also its advantage. Practitioners have profound spiritual power, but it also takes the same amount of money to accumulate such spiritual power. Long time. The second disadvantage is that, as we all know, the reason why the residual scroll technique is called the residual scroll is because there are only the first, second, and third levels of this technique in the world. The cultivation ends when you reach the Suanhui realm, and the 4th level has never been seen. However, many reliable ancient books clearly mention that this technique has 10 levels, which is really suspicious. The third drawback is also the biggest drawback that few people know about. This technique can subtly strengthen the meridians in the body of the practitioner. This is a good thing, but if the undeveloped meridians are also strengthened, this will be the biggest drawback. As a result, it is 1,000 times more difficult for ordinary people to break through in cultivation. After this passage in the book, it is emphasized in significantly larger fonts. The fragmented scroll technique has very few advantages and huge disadvantages, so you must not practice it. If you practice it forcefully, you will suffer the consequences. Remember. Remember. After reading these words, Suchen took a deep breath. The problem was found. The reason why the 8th meridian cannot be broken through no matter what is actually because the 8th meridian has been strengthened. The momentum of ordinary monks attacking the meridian, it is simply not enough for Suchen's strengthened meridians. If you want to break through the 8th level of Kaiwu, you must condense the spiritual power in your body into a more powerful impact, and only then can you break through the meridians. But, like this, the consequences of this are probably that before the meridians have broken through, the body cannot withstand the impact and collapses. Even the spiritual power is out of control, running around in the body, and finally the spiritual power rushes into the brain, and the person goes crazy and dies. Is it possible that this life will stop at the 7th level of Qi martial arts? Suchen tightened his fists, feeling infinitely unwilling. Suddenly, an idea suddenly appeared in his mind. The residual scroll technique can strengthen the meridians, and the meridians will definitely be able to withstand the impact of the breakthrough. The only thing that couldn't withstand the impact was my own body. So, what if I practice a technique that strengthens my body? As soon as this idea emerged in his mind, it immediately grew like buds in spring, and in an instant it occupied all the consciousness in Suchen's mind. Right? My idea was right. Moreover, it is very likely that the original text of this fragmented scroll cultivation technique must contain a special set of physical training techniques. Otherwise, no one would be able to practice this fragmented scroll cultivation technique to the end. Suchen's eyes widened and he was determined. After thinking for a moment, he walked towards the Kaiwu pavilion on the 2nd floor. Exercise his body so that it can withstand the impact on the meridians. Although this method does not have any classics, anyone who comes to prove to him must be right, but no matter what, he has to give it a try. If the bet is right, the future is limitless; if the bet is wrong, the body will die. Anyway, he can't break through in cultivation. In this life, there is no hope of revenge, and life is worse than death. It is better to give it a try. Moreover, he is more than 70% sure of the success of this method. Although the Kaiwu pavilion is smaller than the Bowen pavilion, the majestic and heavy architectural style of the door alone, immediately distinguishing it from the Bowen pavilion. Suchen looked around, and his eyes fell on a stone platform in front of the door. There was a pit in the middle of the stone platform. Thinking of the rules for outer disciples to enter the Kaiwu pavilion, Suchen put his outer disciple identity token into the pit. As soon as the token was put down, a dazzling starburst suddenly burst out from the void between the gate and the stone platform, and then disappeared in an instant. The starburst exploded the moment he came out. Suchen felt as if he was sinking into the bottom of the sea. His whole body was tense and he felt like he was about to suffocate. Even the bulging spiritual power in his body seemed to be about to burst out. Fortunately, Xingguang's only appeared for a moment, and as it disappeared, the pressure on the body returned to normal again. Feeling the cold sweat on his back, Suchen glanced at the void between the door and the stone platform with lingering fear, and pushed gently with both hands. The door of the Kaiwu pavilion slowly opened. Looking around, the bookshelves inside were at least 80% smaller than those in the Bowen pavilion on the first floor. There were only 7 or 8 shelves of kung fu books lying quietly in the attic, waiting for someone to flip through them. Open. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1175. Chapter 1175 Choose Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu. Although there are few books, the popularity here is 10 times more than that of the Bowen Pavilion on the first floor. There are disciples browsing in front of almost every bookshelf, and from time to time they will find someone to communicate in a low voice. None of the disciples here know him. Suchen remained silent and quickly found the bookshelf where the bodybuilding exercises were displayed. This bookshelf was also the only place where no disciples were browsing. There are only 5 or 6 books on bodybuilding exercises on the 2-person high bookshelf, which shows how little market there is for bodybuilding exercises among monks. In fact, every time a monk improves to a small level, such as the 5th level of Kaiwu to the 6th level of Kaiwu, his physical body will also improve somewhat. For example, the 6 senses are sharper, and running and jumping are more agile. When one reaches a larger level, such as from the Qi martial realm to the Xian martial realm, the body will even discharge some impurities and toxins, fundamentally changing the structure of the monk's body to achieve better results. In addition, if you want to achieve the same strength in physical training as in spiritual power, it takes more time and the process is more painful. Therefore, in the entire cultivation world, except for monsters, basically no one relies on physical training to stand at the top. Among the strong, Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu Vajra Bodybuilding Technique Arhat Divine Fist Yi Jin Jing King Yuju. Suchen flipped through the 5 books on bodybuilding exercises one by one. Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu. To practice this technique, you must eat the flesh of monsters and beasts every day, turn the food into gas and gather qi, and use qi to nourish your strength. It will take about 9,981 days to break through to the first level. After that, every time you break through a level, the level of the monster meat you eat must also increase by 1 level, which takes a long time. Once the skill is practiced to an extremely deep level, one can have the power of 10 dragons and 10 elephants. A single punch can reach the strength of 1,000 catties, and the power is infinite. The Vajra body strengthening technique was created by an elder of the Vajra sect hundreds of years ago. The body is soaked in special potions and methods, and the body is beaten with blunt objects every day for several years. It is not afraid of being cut by ordinary swords. Arhat Divine Fist uses boxing as a breakthrough point and finds a new way to achieve the effect of indirectly exercising the physical body. There are 5 levels of this technique. Once you practice it at the highest level, you can fight against 1-star mid-level monsters without losing with your physical body alone. Yi Jinjing is said to have been created by the long-vanished Bodhidharma sect as a practice for ordinary disciples. It can change the tendons and cut the marrow, strengthen the inner courage and the outer strength. After cultivating to a high level, his arms, wrists, fingers, and palms become unusual and as hard as ironstone. His fingers can penetrate the belly of an ox, his side palms can break an ox's head, and his strength can carry a cauldron. Jade art, absorb the power of the earth contained in the spiritual stone to temper your body. The first layer of the Jade Ju can absorb the power of low-grade spiritual stones. After about 500 yuan, it can be built into a solid body that can defend against ordinary swords. The second layer of the Jade Ju can absorb the power of medium-grade spiritual stones. For the same 500 yuan, it can be used to defend against ordinary swords. After training into a soft jade body, the physical toughness is greatly enhanced. The third level of the jade art is to absorb the power of the top-grade spiritual stone. The fourth level is the top-grade spiritual stone. The fifth level is the divine stone. I haven't read the fifth Qing jade art yet. After finishing, Su Chen quickly closed the sacred book and threw it on the bookshelf. So scary. Return the divine stone. Is there such a thing as a legendary divine object? It is still necessary to spend 500 yuan to temper the body. This is really, let alone the top-grade spiritual stone. Su Chen only has a few hundred yuan of low-grade spiritual stone. It is enough for the first level of cultivation, but its effect is only able to defend against ordinary swords. Not to mention the cost-effectiveness. After browsing through it, Su Chen was not satisfied with these 5 bodybuilding techniques. The only ones that are slightly more reliable are Arhat Divine Fist and Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu. However, Arhat's Divine Fist can only be cultivated to the same strength as a 1-star mid-level monster, which is enough for the current Su Chen. He can probably withstand the impact of 8th level and 9th level breakthroughs. But the impact required to break through from the Qi martial realm to the Xian martial realm is not what Arhat Divine Fist can withstand. Dragon Elephant Prajna skill has the best growth potential, but it is not realistic for Su Chen. It would be fine if he was from a famous family. With the family's resources, it would not be impossible to obtain 1-star, 2-star, or even higher level monster meat. But Su Chen came from a poor family, and he didn't even know who his parents were, let alone family resources. If all his current financial resources were used to buy monster meat, and he had 3 meals a day, it would only be enough for him to reach the 9th level of Kaiwu. What if you don't buy it and use your own strength to hunt monsters? That's even more impossible. With his current strength, he can barely fight against the weakest category of 1-star mid-level monsters. But what happens after that? In order to break through to the Suanhui realm, according to the technique, one needs to eat the meat of a 2-star low-level monster beast. Do you want him who is in the martial arts realm to hunt down 2-star monsters? That is the worst and equivalent to the strength of a monk at the 5th level of the Suanhui realm. To fight against it with the cultivation of the 9th level of the Kaiwu realm, what is the difference between that and death? Shaking his head, Su Chen rubbed his brows, weighing the left and right in his mind. After comparing and comparing, I can only practice the Dragon Elephant Prajna Kung Fu first. Although it takes more than 2 months to break through to the first level, this is the fastest method, and the effect is to directly improve the physical body, which just copes with the impact of the breakthrough in cultivation. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1176. Chapter 1176. If you really want to doze off, someone will give you a pillow. As for how to deal with higher level monster meat in the future, we can only take it one step at a time. Picking up the Dragon and Elephant Prajna technique, Su Chen turned around and was about to go to the gatekeeper disciple to register. I didn't want someone to suddenly tap me on the shoulder. This senior brother, it seems that your cultivation has reached the 7th level of Qi martial arts, right? I turned around and saw a young disciple with ordinary features and average height. He looked at Su Chen with a gentle smile and a slight apology for disturbing him. Such a person would never make anyone feel bored. Su Chen looked at him a little. After sizing him up, I saw that his aura seemed to be at the 7th level of Kaiwu, but it should be at the level of the middle level of Kaiwu. The man nodded slightly and said, I was the one who stood out, haha. My outer disciple, what is your surname and name Xiao? I wonder what your surname is, Senior brother. Outer disciple Suchen, is something wrong? Suchen? He Xiao frowned slightly, as if he had heard this name somewhere, but he couldn't remember it at the moment, so that's it? He Xiao cupped his hands and said, I think senior brother Ye is also a straightforward person, so I won't beat around the bush. Recently we want to form a team to hunt monsters to earn some sect contribution points in exchange for some elixirs. I wonder if senior brother is interested. Suchen raised his eyebrows slightly and thought to himself, if you really want to doze off, someone will give you a pillow. Then he asked, I wonder what kind of team this is. What is the target of the hunt? How are the things obtained distributed? When He Xiao heard this, he knew that senior brother Ye had agreed. He was slightly happy and said, we plan to gather 4 or 5 people. Their cultivation level is about the 7th to 8th level of Kaiwu. Those who are too low are not suitable, and those who are too high are not suitable. Nor will he agree. If senior brother Ye agrees, there will be 5 of us now. The target of the hunt is the saw-toothed porcupine on the outskirts of the Eagle Valley. As for the distribution issue, it naturally depends on each person's contribution during the battle. Suchen nodded. The saw-toothed porcupine is the weakest monster among the 1-star mid-level monsters. It has no advantages except for its rough skin and thick flesh, and its needles as sharp as steel. It also has a slightly clumsy body shape, which is especially suitable for Qi martial arts. Jing disciples form a team to hunt and kill. I agree to join, but I have a condition. Oh? What conditions? Can you give me all the serrated porcupine meat? I can exchange it with contribution points. Hearing this, He Xiao glanced at the exercise book in Suchen's hand and said, Brother Ye, can I consult other teammates first? I have no problem with it, it doesn't matter if the monster is too fleshy. But it's hard to guarantee that other teammates will have such needs. Suchen also knows that the value of monster meat is not cheap. When the time comes, the contribution points allocated to hunting monsters may not be enough to buy all the monster meat, and he may have to exchange it for spiritual stones. Well, I know, it's time to work. Also, I wonder when we will leave. Depart in 3 days. He Xiao immediately replied, I believe that with Brother Ye joining us, our gains will be even greater. Brother Ye can also prepare some preparations during this time. After He Xiao left, Suchen stayed in Kaiwu Pavilion for a while, randomly selected a boxing book, registered it and left Kaiwu Pavilion. Back in his small courtyard, Suchen concentrated on practicing this boxing technique, Tiger Roar Fist. He had practiced this boxing technique for a period of time before in Kingxia section. However, it was later interrupted due to some problems, and this martial art was only between the middle and high levels of Huang level, and its power was not very good compared to Xian level skills. But things have to be looked at from 2 aspects. For Suchen, who is now at the peak of the 7th level of Qi Wu, such martial arts can give full play to his current strength. There will be no worries about insufficient spiritual power when using the Xian level technique Yalongbu at full strength. In addition, he also considered that because of the residual scroll technique, he would definitely embark on the road of body training in the future. In the spirit of not wasting anything, learning a few melee martial arts can be considered as taking advantage of your physical strength. He had only practiced this set of boxing techniques for a month or 2 before, but now that he has picked it up and practiced it again, he feels like it has come naturally, like a fish in water, without any sense of sluggishness. In the end, the more I practiced, the smoother it became. In just 2 days, I broke through to the level of Xiao Cheng. Suchen didn't expect that he could master this martial art so quickly. You must know that before, he just practiced casually and never reached this level. It seems that since his cultivation was abolished, his understanding of martial arts has improved a lot, which can be regarded as a blessing in disguise. Tiger Roaring Fist focuses on the practitioner's use of power. It can use the maximum power of the whole body, combined with specific footwork, to rush out with an indomitable momentum. Suchen stood in front of a wooden stake as thick as the mouth of a bowl, with his legs in a lunge position, twisting his waist, using all his strength from the solace of his feet to his waist and then quickly sending it to his right fist. Snapped. A punch was thrown out, bringing up a whistling wind and hitting the wooden stake. The wooden pile instantly broke into two pieces. Suchen nodded, this power was within his expectation. However, if you want to improve this boxing technique, you must improve your physical strength. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1177. Chapter 1177 Trial in the Eagle Valley. After all, Tiger Roaring Fist does not have high requirements on the use of spiritual power, but it does require extremely high physical strength and coordination. In the blink of an eye, the time agreed with He Xiao came. At this time, 4 outer disciples were gathered at the gate of Jinggongmen Mountain. They were all around 20 years old. He Xiao, why haven't you seen the senior brother named Ye you mentioned? It's not like he won't come. Among the 4 people, there are 2 women and 2 men. One of the young women with lower strength frowned and complained. This woman's name is Tan Kaiyang. She is a low-level 7th level Kaiwu practitioner. She is similar in strength to He Xiao. What is He Xiao? Fellow countrymen, just wait a little longer. Since brother Ye promised to come, he shouldn't break his promise. It's still a quarter of an hour before Chenchi He Xiao looked at the time, his expression was calm. Tan Kaiyang glanced secretly at the other male disciple beside him, with admiration in his eyes. However, although the male disciple was handsome, he was not the same as the other female disciple. The disciples chatted happily, but they couldn't help but feel a little blocked in their hearts. Tan Kaiyang stamped his feet and said, it's so abominable to let senior brother Qin Yu and senior sister Yu Ting wait for him alone. I have to give him a good beating when he comes. He Xiao shook his head slightly. This fellow countryman had a somewhat willful character, but fortunately he was used to it. Zhao Yuding on the other side was a little impatient with the guy named Qin Yu in front of her, so she changed the topic for an excuse, stood with Tan Kaiyang, and said, Junior sister Tan, don't worry, I still believe in the person chosen by junior brother he should be here soon. Qin Yu saw that the beauty was deliberately distancing herself from him. He lowered his head and smiled. He took a few steps closer and said, what Tinger said is absolutely true. However, I think it doesn't matter whether the guy named Ye comes or not. It would be better not to come. Tinger and I are enough for this hunting. With one less person, everyone can share more points. Tinger, do you think so? Zhao Yuding frowned and said, Brother Qin and I met for the first time. It's best not to call her Tinger. Qin Yu's face was a little confused when he said this. Seeing that his sweetheart was a little embarrassed, Tan Kaiyang immediately stepped forward and said a lot of words to smooth things over. It was really painstaking. Unfortunately, Qin Yu didn't appreciate it and still stalked Zhao Yuding. Just now, when the 4 people were getting impatient, a green figure with a whistling sound quickly came to the crowd in a few jumps. The person who came was none other than Suchen. So fast, Tan Kaiyang lightly covered her red lips, with surprise in her eyes. Zhao Yuding on the side also nodded, not bad. Snored. But I have some superficial skills, and I dare to show off here. Qin Yu was a little dissatisfied with Zhao Yuding's appreciation of others. He Xiao stepped forward to greet him and said, Brother Ye came on time, exactly. Haha, some little things delayed my time, but I shouldn't be late, Suchen said with a smile. No, now that everyone is here, let's set off. He Xiaodao slapped his forehead again and said with a smile, I almost forgot to tell you that everyone agrees with what you said about monster meat, but you have to exchange it with contribution points of corresponding value. Suchen cupped his hands and thanked him. This is natural. Thank you so much, yeah. Zhao Yuding and He Xiao nodded to Suchen. Tan Qiang hid behind Zhao Yuding and did not dare to speak. What he said before about teaching Suchen a lesson was suppressed after seeing Suchen's cultivation. Only standing proudly, Qin Yu looked up at the sky and snorted, saying hello to Suchen. Suchen didn't pay attention to Qin Yu's performance. He looked around and got a general understanding of the strength of the team. Among them, Qin Yu and Zhao Yuding's the cultivation level is the highest in the team. Both of them have the cultivation level of the 8th level of Kaiwu. As for their true strength, we will only know it later in the hunting. Tan Qiang and He Xiao have the weakest cultivation level. Everyone is at the lower level of the 7th level of Kaiwu. However, He Xiao's foundation should be more solid than Tan Qiang's, and He Xiao's character is also more stable. As for Suchen himself, just looking at the surface, his strength is exactly the highest in the team. The position in the middle is neither high nor low. He Xiao took Suchen and introduced everyone one by one. When it was Qin Yu's turn, he waved his hand impatiently and said, okay, forget about mother-in-law and mother, this is what time is it? Let's go quickly. He Xiao nodded apologetically to Suchen. Seeing that the latter was not angry, he couldn't help but admire Suchen's broad-mindedness. Now that everyone is ready, let's set off. He Xiao shouted and led the crowd out. The Juying Valley is located in the center of the mountain range where the Vajra Gate is located. It is surrounded by dozens of mountains. It is densely covered with ancient trees and contains countless poisonous insects, birds, and beasts. It is also a paradise for all kinds of monsters. But because there are the elders of the Vajra sect with high cultivation level regularly clean up around the Juying Valley, so if ordinary disciples do not go deep into the Juying Valley, the danger is still small. Although everyone met for the first time along the way, because they are all young people, they have common topics. There were many, so they had a great conversation. Through chatting, Suchen learned that although He Xiao had low cultivation level, he had rich practical experience and had actually followed several senior brothers and sisters through the outskirts of Juying Valley several times. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1178. Chapter 1178 Envy, Jealousy, and Hatred. Flamestone Ox. This made everyone look at him with admiration. Even Tan Qiang, a fellow villager of He Xiao, knew this for the first time and was greatly surprised. Haha, I was just following my senior brothers and sisters, but it made me familiar with the environment here. He Xiao said modestly. That's pretty good too. Zhao Yuding had a faint smile on her lips, which was extremely touching. Then I'll have to rely on Captain He to take care of me all the way. Don't dare. Before He Xiao finished speaking, Qin Yu interrupted him and said with some sourness, don't talk big words in front of us. If something goes wrong, Yu Ting and I won't be able to take care of so many people. What senior brother Qin said makes sense. Although experience is important, without strong strength, no matter how much experience you have, it is useless. Senior brother Qin, I rely on you to take care of my little sister. Tan Qiang looked at Qin Yu with eyes filled with awe. Qin Yu snorted, feeling a little proud, and looked at Zhao Yuding again. He Xiao shook his head, turned to look at Suchen, and suddenly found that the latter was staring at the tree branches in front of him. He looked thoughtful. Looking along his gaze, He Xiao suddenly found a spider the size of a copper coin lying on the branch. The spider was covered with red thin lines. It was very poisonous at first glance. Suchen discovered He Xiao looked at him, smiled silently, said nothing, and continued to walk forward. There was a trace of shock and shame in He Xiao's eyes that could not be concealed. His powers of observation are so sharp, without his reminder, I almost missed this bloodline tarantula. Moreover, Judging from his appearance, he is very familiar with this poisonous insect in the wild. Could it be that Suchen, who was originally thought to be broad-minded and good-tempered, immediately seemed a little unfathomable in He Xiao's eyes. Seeing that Suchen had no intention of reminding everyone, He Xiao smiled helplessly and said softly, "Everyone, be careful of the blood-threaded wolf spider above your head. This kind of poisonous insect is extremely poisonous. If you are bitten for a quarter of an hour without treatment, you will die from the poison." The other 3 people who were reminded immediately raised their heads. Maybe it was because of the movement of a few people. Big, the bloodline wolf spider suddenly bounced down, and the target turned out to be Zhao Yuding, who was walking in the middle. "Yuding, be careful." Before Zhao Yuding could make any move, Qin Yu suddenly shouted, drew his sword, and slashed with a gorgeous blade. The bloodline spider was split into 2 in an instant. It fell to the ground and died. Bloodline spiders are only poisonous insects, not monsters. Ordinary mortals with a little martial arts can easily deal with them. The loud noise Qin Yu made He Xiao and Suchen in front frown. You know, now this 5-person team has reached the outskirts of Juying Valley and may encounter monsters at any time. Qin Yu's big movement is very likely to attract powerful monsters that no one wants to encounter. However, the person involved did not without knowing it. He stood beside Zhao Yuding with a complacent expression and asked with concern, "Yuding, are you okay?" "Thank you for your concern. I can handle these things myself." Zhao Yuding followed Suchen and the others with an indifferent expression. After being rejected by Zhao Yuding, Qin Yu's face was a little gloomy. He stood there with his eyes narrowed and stared at the beauty in front of him with a complicated expression. He caught up with Zhao Yuding again and wanted to defend himself. Suchen, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped, waved his hand to signal the team to stop, and said softly, "Hush! Silence!" After the scene just now, He Xiao had already regarded Suchen as an old bird with more experience than himself. Hearing this, he immediately stopped, holding his breath and concentrating, trying to sense the movement around him. Zhao Yuding's eyes were between He Xiao and Suchen. Time passed for a while, and finally it stopped at Suchen, thoughtfully. Qin Yu was a little impatient. First, He Xiao, a low-level 7th-level Kaiwu man, pretended to be the boss in front of him, so he could bear it. Now another brat with the 7th level of Kaiwu dares to order him. Does he really think that his 8th level of Kaiwu strength is just a lie? "What are you? You dare to give me orders?" Qin Yu shouted at Suchen in front of him. "I haven't found anything wrong. How dare you pretend to be mysterious in front of everyone? Is it fun?" Suchen frowned even more tightly and glanced at Qin Yu behind him. "What are you staring at? Believe it or not, I made you lie in bed for 10 days and a half." Qin Yu was very arrogant. Suchen turned to look at He Xiao. The meaning in his eyes was very clear. "Why did you invite such a teammate?" He Xiao's face didn't look good. He was about to say something to Qin Yu, but suddenly his face changed. Change? Suchen turned around and ran away without even thinking about it. That's too late. Run quickly. The flaming stone bull, if it catches up, none of us can escape. When He Xiao heard this, his face became even more ugly and turned blue. Just now, he had only vaguely felt the aura of a tyrannical monster. Unexpectedly, Suchen could even tell what kind of monster it was. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1179. Chapter 1179 Human Nature in Desperate Situations. Thinking about how Suchen was able to sense the danger just now so long ahead of him, He Xiao felt that he would never take the target unawares. He would definitely be right about the flaming stone cow. At that moment, He Xiao immediately urged everyone to retreat. The flaming stone cow? A majestic 1-star high-level monster. The defense and attack are terrifyingly powerful. When encountering such a demonic beast, all of them are at the 7th or 8th level of Kaiwu. They can't even break through other people's defenses. How many people will die? Suchen was the first to retreat, and the one who followed him was not He Xiao, but Zhao Yuding. Suchen never expected that this soft-looking girl would react so quickly, and even more so decisively. Seeing that Qin Yu and Tan Qiang were still in place, He Xiao shouted urgently, "Run! No one can survive if you run too slowly." However, Qin Yu still turned a deaf ear and stood motionless on the spot, folding his arms with a look on his face. With a contemptuous smile, she said in a weird voice, "Junior sister Yuding, don't be fooled by these two guys, they are playing monkey tricks." Tan Qiang looked at Suchen and the three of them running away in a panic, and then looked at them with calm expressions. Qin Yu, the love in his heart defeated his reason, stood beside Qin Yu, and said with a sweet smile, "Senior brother Qin, junior sister is willing to watch the show with you." Qin Yu smiled at Tan Qiang and looked towards the direction where Zhao Yuding disappeared. The look in his eyes became more complicated. Snort. "We have to find a chance to keep those two boys here, Zhao Yuding, I will give you no shame, and when I cook you, you will be humiliated in every possible way. You are the first person who dares to reject me casually." Suddenly, the ground trembled. Immediately afterwards, a monstrous heat wave hit violently. Moo! The unique roar of the flaming stone cow sounded in the dense forest. The trees in the distance kept falling, and beep sounded beep, pop, pop burning sound. Qin Yu's pupils dilated instantly, and the first drop of cold sweat broke out. He immediately activated all his spiritual power, screamed strangely, and ran away like flying, leaving Tan Qiang standing there in a trance. After a while, they screamed and chased after them. However, Tan Qiang and the two escaped too slowly. After the two left, the dense forest was suddenly separated by a strange force and fell down. A giant monster more than 2 meters high rushed come out. The blue-gray skin is like a hard rock, but there is still a translucent red flame burning on it, instantly burning the surrounding 3 meters to red ground. The flaming stone cow raised its huge horns like cast iron, and glared with its huge bull eyes. Ahead, its forehoofs dug impatiently at the ground, roared, and its body weighing more than 10 tons immediately chased the alien in front like an arrow from its string with incredible agility. It smelled a nasty smell in front, and possessed these. The strength of the smelly ants is so weak, it will trample them all into pulp. Ah! Help! Senior brother Qin! Help me! Tan Qiang's cultivation level is low and the speed is the slowest among the five. In an instant, he was overtaken by the flaming stone bull. Seeing that the two sides were less than 20 or 30 meters away, he could be overtaken at any time. Qin Yu looked back. Seeing that this was not a big deal, he was so frightened by the fierce momentum of the flaming stone bull that he almost staggered. He shouted, "Junior sister, I forgive Qin for being unable to do anything," and immediately used all his strength to run away. Qin Yu's reaction, Tan Qiang's heart was immediately chilled to the core. The breath of the ferocious beast was getting closer and closer to him, and the surging heat wave seemed to be burning on his back. Am I going to die like this? Tan Qiang's eyes were full of despair, but the unwillingness in her heart made her keep screaming for help, hoping that someone could help her at this time. Brother, yeah, it seems to be the voice of junior sister Tan Qiang. Zhao Yuding, who was following Suchen, suddenly stopped. We have to save her. Suchen glanced at her but made no move. However, he admired this woman in his heart. Although he did not use wandering dragon steps along the way, his speed was definitely not low. It was at least faster than the ordinary monks at the 8th level of Kaiwu. 20%. And Zhao Yuding was able to keep up with him all the way, which showed that she was not an ordinary 8th level Kaiwu disciple. Suchen admired Zhao Yuding in his heart, but he didn't know that Zhao Yuding was even more shocked by Suchen. A cultivation level lower than hers. An ordinary disciple of a small realm actually has to use 90% of his strength to keep up with him. And judging from the fact that he is not blushing or out of breath, he still has some strength left. This person's cultivation is definitely more than the 7th level peak of Kaiwu on the surface. Zhao Yuding made such a judgment about Su Chen in her heart. After a while, He Xiao chased after him. Hearing Zhao Yuding's words, he seemed a little embarrassed. What a joke. A 1-star high-level monster was chasing behind her, and everyone ran away. It's too late and you have to go back to die. Among the 5 people here, who can outrun the angry flaming stone bull? Let alone run away with one person. Junior sister Zhao, more people may die if you do this, He Xiao gave some difficult advice. No. We are a team, I can't just ignore it. If you don't go, I will. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1180. Chapter 1180. The fun ends here. Zhao Yuding looked determined, pulled out the red thin sword on her back, and swept towards the back. This, He Xiao was in a dilemma, staring at Su Chen, with no idea in his mind. Su Chen spread his hands and said that there was nothing he could do to persuade him. How about, let's go take a look. He Xiao still couldn't bear it and looked at Su Chen hesitantly. Su Chen folded his arms and shook his head. If you do something wrong, you always have to pay a price, otherwise you will continue to make mistakes. But He Xiao was about to say something else, but suddenly there was a crash, the bushes were parted, and Qin Yu ran out in a panic. He glanced at the two of them and shouted with a guilty conscience, "What are you looking at me for? Why don't you run away? Are you waiting to die?" Su Chen was delighted by this kind of popularity. He acted like a harmless person despite the trouble he caused. He Xiao grabbed Qin Yu, who was about to continue running away, and asked, "Where are Zhao Yuding and the others? Didn't you meet them?" Qin Yu's eyes quickly flashed with a hint of unbearability. He threw away He Xiao's arm and shouted, "It's none of my business. I advised them, but they won't run. They want to die. They are looking for death themselves. Get out of here. It was obviously you who attracted the flaming stone cow. Now that junior sister Tan and senior sister Zhao are in a state of death because of you, you actually said such words." He Xiao was angry. People can't be so shameless. There must be a bottom line. Get the fuck out of here. Qin Yu relied on his higher cultivation than He Xiao Gang and pushed him away. The latter took 5 steps back before he stopped. You. Qin Yu looked at He Xiao with disdain, then glanced at Su Chen and snorted, "What are you doing? How dare you, a low-level disciple of the 7th level of Kaiwu, dare to give orders to me and get angry at me? What are you? Even if you add the man named Ye next to you, you two are no match for me." Qin Yu's expression was a little panicked and stern at first, but as he talked about it, his expression gradually changed, taking on a hint of viciousness and cruelty. "Maybe, if we kill them both, no one will know what happened here. He has been a very face-conscious person since he was a child. If what happened here spreads to the sect, especially if his own evil deeds of attracting a high-level monster and killing 2 female disciples of the same sect are exposed, then he will how to be a human being. Why do you think he is the glorious young Master Qin? Right? They must be killed. Kill them and no one will know. Moreover, for a low-level 7th level Qi martial artist, I am confident that I can seriously injure him with one palm strike with all my strength. Even though the other one is at the peak of the 7th level of Kaiwu, it is impossible for him to survive 10 moves in my hands. After 10 moves, it's time for his body to die and his spirit to disappear." Qin Yu had countless thoughts in his mind at this moment. "It's not my fault, it's their bad luck. Having found enough excuses for himself, Qin Yu immediately changed his face to one full of guilt, walked up to He Xiao, and apologized. Junior brother it was my fault just now. I was so excited that it didn't hurt you, right? Qin Yu apologized while approaching He Xiao. At the same time, he kept paying attention to Su Chen at the side with the corner of his eye to prevent the latter from running away immediately when he saw something was wrong. He Xiao frowned, and Qin Yu's attitude changed moment by moment. It was too fast, which made people feel a little weird. But he didn't think about Qin Yu's intention to harm him. Standing aside, Su Chen, who had been silent for the whole time, watched this scene coldly. He experienced great changes in his life in Qingxia section. He has changed and has already seen through the evils of these human natures. Almost as soon as Qin Yu had the idea, Su Chen felt something was wrong. But he did not intend to expose it now. Although He Xiao had practiced outside a few times, this was all done under the protection of his fellow disciples. Judging from his reaction now, it must be the first time he encountered such a cruel and bloody thing. He Xiao has a good character, and Su Chen intends to make friends with him. So today let's just teach him a lesson. Humans are the most fickle and cruel animals. Junior brother you are right. We shouldn't leave our two female companions behind. I thought of a good way to try to save them. Qin Yu was making up lies all the way, his eyes fixed on He Xiao's expression, and at the same time he reached for the sword at his waist with one hand. When the distance between the two was less than 2 meters, He Xiao finally realized something was wrong and yelled, "What are you going to do?" while quickly retreating. Seeing that the matter was exposed, Qin Yu simply tore off his mask, revealing a ferocious face. He pulled out his sword with a kang lang sound, and at the same time took out a green pill from his arms and threw it towards Su Chen on the other side. Hey! Just leave them all here. Qin Yu held the sword with one hand, and a clear, gorgeous crescent sword light instantly struck He Xiao's head. This sword was bound to split the man in front of him in half. The fun ends here. An indifferent voice suddenly came from behind. Qin Yu's long sword suddenly stopped, and he lowered his head stiffly, looking at the sword tip exposed on his chest in disbelief. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1181. Chapter 1181. The throat-sealing green centipede. True colors. Why my poison pill doesn't work on you? Qin Yu couldn't believe it until his death that one day he would die at the hands of a mere ordinary disciple of the outer sect of the Vajra sect at the 7th level of Qi martial arts. And this person is someone he has always looked down upon. Why are you talking about this? Su Chen held a small green centipede between the food and middle fingers of his left hand and stretched it out to Qin Yu's eyes. The green centipede was still twisting, trying to choose people to eat. What? It turned out to be a throat-sealing green centipede. Seeing this inconspicuous little centipede, He Xiao cried out. This kind of green centipede with a closed throat, despite its small size, even if the blood thread spider was bitten by it, it would have to be healed instantly. Death. It's obvious how toxic it is. Being able to seal this kind of poison alive in a wax pill is not a common method. It must be your family's secret skill, right? Su Chen's movement with one hand shook, and the green centipede with the throat sealed was killed on the spot. You won't have a good wife, my family will. Qin Yu knelt down on the ground with a plop, struggling to say the last words. It's useless, the monsters here are the best masters of corpse destruction and trace elimination. You'll die perfectly clean, don't worry. Su Chen pulled out the long sword from Qin Yu's body and shook off the blood on the sword with an indifferent expression. Snap! Qin Yu fell to the ground with his eyes wide open and refused to close his eyes. Su Chen wiped the dark star sword clean and saw He Xiao said, "Don't be in a daze, hurry up and save them too, otherwise something will really happen if it's later." He Xiao swallowed hard. The scene that just happened was too shocking for him, and it is still difficult to digest it. But his feelings about Suchen are more complicated. This is definitely not an easy person to get along with. But, it should be worth being friends. In the originally dense forest with lush vegetation, a large open space suddenly appeared. The clearing was littered with vegetation and filled with flames and burning embers. A huge creature over 2 meters high and 4 meters long, breathing heavily, staring with big red eyes, staring at the two petite and weak human women in front of it, its eyes full of indifference and blood. "Master, senior sister, why don't you just run away? Woohoo, I can't live anymore, I regret believing that hypocrite, but there is no chance to change again." Tan Kian looked horrified. Looking at the flaming stone cow in front of him, his whole body was on fire. His spirit had already collapsed. Although Zhao Yuding's eyes were a little frightened, they were more determined. The slender hands tightly grasped the red rapier, and the snow-white teeth bit the red and plump lower lip, as if blood was dripping from it. "No. We will come back alive." "Will? Really?" Tan Kian is already a little nervous. "Real?" Zhao Yuding said firmly. She didn't know where she got the courage to say this. But when she said this, what came to her mind was the back of a young man, the one she had been chasing for a long time. Young man's back. This can't go on like this. Zhao Yuding stared closely at the violent flaming stone bull in front of her, pushed Tan Kian out, and shouted, "Go away quickly. Find Suchen and the others. Let me lure this bull away." Before Tan Kian came to his senses, Zhao Yuding picked up several stones on the ground with one sword. Whoosh! 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 They all hit the stone cow. Although this attack was not enough for the flaming stone cow, which is known for its defense. It doesn't count, but a weak ant actually dared to openly provoke. The flaming stone bull spurted thick blue-gray smoke from its thick nostrils, and rushed towards Zhao Yuding with a moo. In an instant, the ground shook. "Run! Do not look back." Zhao Yuding still cares about others even in this situation. Tan Kian watched Zhao Yuding lead the stone cow to run away in the other direction. He barely recovered from his collapse, gritted his teeth and persisted in finding the direction, and staggered away. Zhao Yuding dared to divert the flames. She Niu is also a little sure. She has practiced a yellow level high level light skill 3 years ago. This light skill was given to her by one of her senior sisters. It is especially suitable for women to practice. At this time, Zhao Yuding leaned on her small body with the advantage of lightness. He can turn left and right in the dense forest, and his speed is as fast as that of the flaming stone bull. However, this state cannot last long. Because no monk can compete with the monster beasts of the same level for endurance. What's more, the flaming stone cow is a level higher than Zhao Yuding, who is at the lower level of the 8th level of Kaiwu. Only monks in the Suanhui realm can deal with the flaming stone cow. Over there, Tan Kian stumbled away for a while, and happened to meet someone who was looking for someone. Suchen and his wife. "Why are you the only one here? Where is Zhao Yuding?" Suchen asked with a frown. Tan Kian had experienced 2 ups and downs in his life. Now he finally met his companions. His emotions collapsed again. Tears leaked out like a flood that broke a bank, and no sound was heard at all. Suchen and He Shao, after asking a few more questions, I learned that Zhao Yuding had actually led the flaming stone cow away alone.